Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacey Parker. I'm a senior lecturer in organisational psychology in the School of Psychology at UQ here. I'm currently the director of our group, the Centre for Business and Organisational Psychology. This is our first seminar of the year, so thank you so much for everyone that's come in person and the people that are zooming in. Hello, in case you can see me. And so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some research I'm doing with Hannah Sacker and Marissa Dozo, who was a previous research assistant of mine, who's now down at Uni of Melbourne in the School of Psychology there. And it's getting to the point where I'd like to start thinking about publishing this data. So actually, I really wanted to get your advice today and feedback on certain elements and decisions to be made. So I've got some questions at the end. It's not a pop quiz or anything like that, but I'm really keen to get people's reactions to what aspects are more interesting, what might make more sense, what might be more defendable part of the publication process. And so I'll explain a little bit what energy is, because and what energy management is. It's on, but it was just not thinking it was. Let's give that another whirl. No. I think it might be flat. That's okay, I can pop back. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Neil. That's great. Looks like my only option is to... Oh, yeah, no, that's finally working. There we go. Okay. So I think there's been a lot of interest in this idea of energy in OB and IO psychology recently. Lots of people have been invoking the concept of energy, and all kinds of different sort of things have been studied. I'd say there's a bit of an issue of construct proliferation. So that's why I wanted to just spend a little bit of time getting clear on what we mean by energy. And actually this review by Quinn et al. In one of the Academy of Management journals, I think does the best and most comprehensive job of this. The issue is that at the moment people are talking about relational energy, mental energy, spiritual energy, productive energy, all these sort of little different constructs. But really, when we're talking about energy, we're talking about people's subjective sense of feeling vitality, vigor, sort of a state of high positive arousal, and not fatigued and exhausted. When we start to talk about these other energy concepts, I think we're actually got a bit of an issue of criterion contamination, of sort of conflating cause and effect. Like I might have a positive interaction with Kirsten in the corridor, and then I feel like really good about that. Is that relational energy, or is that just this positive sense of vitality from having had a nice positive interaction with someone? Okay? So when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about this subjective sense of energy, feeling alive and vital, also sometimes called vigor. Actually, I'm aware there's a meta-analysis that's looked at vitality and vigour in a number of ways and have found they're essentially the same thing. If you look at the items, they're essentially the same thing, but also not feeling exhausted and fatigued. And, you know, in the broader sort of occupational health psychology literature, we sometimes consider those indicators of someone feeling well at work, so the indicators of occupational, organisational or employee well-being. So if you think about, for example, the construct of burnout, it has an emotional exhaustion component, so fatigue component. And the concept of engagement has a sort of high arousal, positive affect component being bigger. Now, the other really important thing they noted was that you don't just sort of have energy in a vacuum. It's something that sort of needs to be actively managed, and you can really only gain energy when you put your resources to use, so you do something to foster it or protect it or maintain it. And so that's where people have gotten interested in this idea of how do we manage our energy. Now, looking further back afield, taking a sort of more bigger picture view of this, you know, maybe we've previously looked at this only in the context of respite from work, And so the most obvious respite from work is taking a vacation. Meta-analysis of the vacation literature has found that the benefits for your health and well-being and performance only last about 2 to 4 weeks before you're back to where you were pre-vacation, which is a bit depressing. So we can't actually just wait to have a vacation to recoup our energy, okay? Certainly vacations may be very beneficial in other ways, like having positive experiences with family or friends and things like this. The bulk of the literature has looked at these respite periods after working, so in the evenings each day after working or on the weekends week to week. And there's now been so much study in this space, in this sort of form of respite, that there's been 2 meta-analyses in the last few years. And they've found that if you do more work in your leisure time, that's really bad for your well-being, so for exhaustion and engagement, and a whole range of other outcomes, including your performance. But most of that literature is self-report. If you're doing some activities that are just sort of like watching Netflix on the couch, so low effort activities, these are not necessarily beneficial or bad. They're a bit mute. The things that really, really help your recovery are more active recreation, so physical activities and social activities. But then we start to get a bit more clear about what's going on here. Maybe it's not so much the specific activity that people engage in, but the psychological experiences it brings. And they found it's really important that you have this psychological sense of detachment from work, so you get to forget about it, have some mental distance from it. This psychological experience of relaxation, so you feel like you've got to kick back and relax and use your leisure time. And also this experience of mastery. So you've got to sort of do something intellectually stimulating or challenging outside of work. And so these experiences are quite important. And the meta-analyses found these things in green were beneficial for health, well-being, sleep, performance. And one of the meta-analyses looked at people's job design, so their job demands and their resources, and they found these benefits of recovery experiences in off-work time contribute to well-being above and beyond the job design. So there's an incremental benefit of what we can do in our non-work time, personally in terms of our recovery, beyond the design of our job. Certainly, I'm not saying we need to forget about work design, and I'm going to look a bit at work design today in how it shapes our energy management. But, it would be, I think, unfortunate maybe to completely look just at how a job is designed, because people have a whole range of experiences both at work and outside of work. We want to understand health and well-being of employees. We probably need to look at both what's happening in terms of the job and also what they're doing at home, what they're experiencing at home. So energy management really came to the fore when people started to think about, well, what can the employee do during the work day? We don't have to just wait for respite at the end of the day, in the evenings or the weekends to recoup our resources. Maybe there's something we can do more like proactively during the day to sustain our energy. And so people have been looking at how employees use their breaks, both their lunch breaks and what we call micro breaks, so a little more frequent mini breaks throughout the day. But people have also been looking at other strategies more to do with how we optimize doing our work, and we call these work-related strategies. There's a ton of really cool literature now on breaks, so many things we know about breaks, but we don't know very much about these work-related strategies just yet. The paper that really spurred off all this was by Fritz and colleagues, and it was qualitative research that asked knowledge workers, how do you manage your energy? And it was really interesting because they identified 42 different unique strategies people use. It makes me think back to the stress and coping literature, where over 400 different ways of coping with work stress and other types of stresses have been identified. So really, there's just so many things people will say that they do to manage their energy. Some of those things you can say are a micro break, so they create a respite or detachment from work. So I go next door and have a chat with Kirsten. That'd be like a social chat kind of micro break. Or I might step outside and go look at some nature or a park. We'll go for a little brief walk. That might be more like a physical micro break. Or I might do something more private, like checking my email or checking in with my partner or something like that. And I'm checking maybe more like non-work, non-pressury stuff in relation to my email or social media or things like that. In relation to the work-related strategies they found, they identified things like pro-social helping of colleagues, also learning, like doing something that's new or interesting, setting a new goal, switching tasks, organising works and making a to-do list, these sorts of things. So they're all still connected with work, but they're sort of changing up or optimising how you're doing your work. Now, the issue was that they did all these nice qualitative interview studies with people, identified these strategies, and then did a survey asking people how often they use these different strategies, and then asking them to rate their vitality and their fatigue, and then just ran some correlations. And there were some negative correlations of use of the micro breaks with the energy variables. So they concluded that people only use micro breaks when they're already fatigued and depleted. But you can't conclude that from a cross-sectional study. So, hey, Andrew. So my colleagues and I, and this work was led by Hannah Sacker and his student, Holly Brailsford, wanted to look at this using experience sampling methodology. And so we asked employees every hour of their workday were they using any of the strategies, and at the end of that each hour, how are you feeling? So that we could look at the momentary use of these strategies and its effect on energy within the workday. And we actually found some slightly different conclusions. So we didn't find that weird effect that they found, where the use of micro breaks in general had these negative associations with energy. We did find what they found, which was like the more people use these work-related strategies, like setting a goal, organising, pro-social helping, the more they are reporting feeling vitality. In terms of the hour-by-hour data, we found the more people were using micro breaks, the better their energy. So both in terms of reduced fatigue and improved vitality. And we checked this, controlling for the prior hour's energy. We checked reversed effects. We checked lagged effects. So it's very momentary phenomena. It's happening at the time of the use of the strategies, not 2 or 4 hours later. Now, we also didn't find any momentary effects of these work-related strategies. So ourselves and others have sort of started to conclude maybe these work-related strategies have more longer-term benefits, like you use them and they might help you feel more alive and vital in the long run, because organising your work, setting goals, these sorts of things are probably really good in the long run, but maybe in the moment that you're using these strategies, it might feel even a little bit stressful, stress arousing, to be like looking at your to-do list and organising it and reflecting on how much work you have to do. Also, maybe when you're pro-socially helping someone in the moment, then it might make you a little bit stressed out about stuff that you've left behind while you've been helping them or something like that. So in the moment, there might be no net gain of using these strategies, but no net loss. But it's over time in the long run that they'll improve your vitality, maybe through a whole range of mechanisms. Maybe it makes work more motivating. Maybe there's other sort of well-being benefits from helping, which has been found in the pro-social literature, for example. And I'll just quickly say there's 20-something micro breaks here and 20-something work-related strategies here. We use the Fritz and colleagues measure. We also did a factor analysis of it, which they hadn't done in their original paper. And there's some types of micro breaks and some types of work-related strategies. And we'll come back to that in a sec, because Anis and I sort of redeveloped the measure a little bit in this study. So in terms of next steps and what I want to talk to you about today for this study, we're starting to get interested in, are we managing more than our energy, or are there other sort of consequences of energy management during the workday? See, I've already started to allude to stress arousal, but there might be some other things that are happening, in particular for these work-related strategies. And we're sort of starting to get interested in why or when we manage our energy. Okay, so is it when we really need to, when work is demanding? Are there other sort of factors around the nature of the work we're doing, whether it's enjoyable or not, or aversive, that might be shaping these strategies and the use of them, and the consequences of using them? And then stepping back a little bit, are there particular employees who might really need to manage their energy more than others? So there are people who really need to do this, and failing to do it, is it affecting them more? So in terms of these new avenues for managing your energy, our first aim with this paper is to sort of understand if there are other potential benefits or costs. And so certainly our research and others is really sort of supporting that these strategies do help sustain energy, micro breaks more in the short term, work-related strategies maybe more in general over the longer term. But there's this question about whether it helps us with stress. And all the researchers, when they're writing their introductions to these papers, mention this or the discussion, but nobody ever measures it. And so in this study, we actually had people hooked up to heart rate monitors and we measured their heart rate variability so we could understand an indicator of the physiological arousal of stress. And the other thing we're interested in is that balance between kind of well-being and performance. And so we were wondering if some of these strategies, in particular the work-related strategies, might help people feel like they're mastering their work. Okay. So using the work-related strategies in the moment might not help you feel less tired or more alive and vital, but the reason you're doing them might be because it helps you feel on top of your work, like you're progressing your goals. That's something we wanted to explore. Now, we're not the first to think about this. I mean, in some prior research with Hannes, we found the work-related strategies are beneficial for feeling more satisfied with your job. And Swell Kim, who's previously talked to our group before COVID, in 2019, or maybe it was the beginning of 2020, maybe we were lucky, I can't remember. He's also done some research finding the use of micro breaks during the day can help people's performance. And here he had sales performance, so an actual objective measure of performance. But he found that it was only through the activation of vitality. So micro breaks make you feel more alive and vital, then you can redirect that energy into your performance. And that actually only held for employees who were low in work engagement in general. And that's probably because they might need that boost in vitality more to help them perform than people who really engage in their job and really like it and are trying. So in this study, we're expecting, as usual, micro breaks should be beneficial for the subjective sense of energy. We're expecting it will be micro breaks that will help with stress arousal, not the work-related strategies. So taking a respite from work would help the body relax and recover, kick in the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we're measuring with this indicator. And we're expecting, we might not see, as per prior research, is any benefits of the use of these work-related strategies hour by hour for energy or for stress, but we're thinking they're going to help people feel like more in control, mastering their work, making progress on it. We also expect there'll be this sort of trade-off, right? Like if you take a micro break, it might make you feel more well, but then at the same time, that means you're not working and you're not progressing your goals. So it might then make you feel a little bit less like you're mastering your work that hour. So our second aim was to understand, when do we manage our energy? And there's a couple of propositions that could be, plausible explanations here. One would be when our energy is depleted, which is what Fritz et al. Hypothesized in their first study. But Hannes and I's prior research has found that's not the case hour by hour. Similarly, some research by Sabine and one of her students has found that fatigue doesn't predict micro break use. But there has been just published a study by Sewell, and they found that if you have a bad night's sleep, in the morning you feel more fatigued, then during that day you take more micro breaks if we ask people at the end of the day. So that process might be more like a day-to-day thing, like your general mood of the day, rather than a moment-to-moment thing, hour within the hour. But I can test that with this data, so we can look at that. Another possibility would be the work demands. How busy and demanding is work at the moment? How much is there to be done? Is it really hard? Do you feel under pressure like you're having to work very fast? Now here there's been a little bit of prior research, but everyone's sort of looked at an interaction of the use of the strategies with job demands. And for example, Sewell, in his initial study, found that you can sort of like lessen the negative effect of job demands on fatigue by the use of micro breaks. And Hannes and I have found that some work-related strategies can actually have costs when people have high workload, like organising strategies. So if you've got a lot of pressure and you use organising strategies, it actually makes you more exhausted rather than less exhausted, which makes sense with that sort of stress arousal hypothesis. But no one's really looked at whether the demands of the job can predict what types of strategies people are using. And if we look to the recovery literature, there's been a lot of work done on this. And Sabine's recently written a paper about the recovery paradox. And it's quite interesting. When job demands are really high, that's when people should need to manage their energy, right? You've been depleted, so you should need to recover. But unfortunately, job demands compromise people's recovery efforts because it's much harder to engage in active leisure and have these lovely, amazing experiences where you completely disconnect from work when your job demands are high. So we're interested in looking at that in the context of energy management within the workday. Another factor that's gaining attention is work motivation. And Sabina and her student, Catherine Bosch, found in a really nice daily diary study that people take a micro break when their work tasks are aversive. So when your work's really crappy, you don't like it, it feels like something you have to do, not something you want to do, and they made a custom measure of task aversiveness that's really like extrinsic motivation, then you're more likely to take a micro break. And they found that this was through this mechanism of wanting to have a little reward, like self-reward from the aversiveness of work. They also looked at some other things, like if you feel like you're performing well and achieving your goals, does that predict taking a micro break? And it doesn't, which was interesting. And they also had that energy level, as I said before, and it didn't predict taking a micro break. So it was the nature of the work that was predicting whether people took a break, and it was the aversiveness in their research that found it. So being a self-determination theory scholar, I was more interested in the positive side of work motivation. So in this research, we're looking at whether work is fun, enjoyable, interesting, intrinsically motivating as something that might drive the use of these strategies. And then a third aim around who is at risk, we were interested to know if people who are more over-committed to work might be not using these strategies as much as they should, or not benefiting from them as much as they should when they use them. And so for those of you not familiar with this construct, overcommitment is historically considered like a trait-like construct, so we measured it in our baseline survey. And it's a sort of described as a group of attitudes, behaviours or emotions reflecting excessive striving and desire for self-esteem in relation to your work. It's part of Seeger's effort, reward and balance model of job strain, and it's considered the intrinsic pathway to stress. So you have job demands, which are kind of extrinsic pressure causing job strain, and then you have the intrinsic pathway, which is the sort of pressure we put on ourselves, like overcommitment, and then there's sort of rewards and recognition, things like that can buffer the negative effects of job demand. But overcommitment not only has these direct effects, it can also interact with job demands, which we were interested in for this research, in the prediction of the sort of stress process. So if we bring this all together, we really thought in the moment it's going to be how demanding your work is that's going to compromise the break-taking behaviour. And we didn't think demands would necessarily have a straight or direct relationship with the work-related strategies, because there's lots of different types of demands and lots of ways people can appraise demands. But we did think that if your work is really demanding a lot of pressure, it's very hard, you're having to work very fast, that's going to mean you're going to be less likely to take a micro break that hour. We thought it was the intrinsic motivation that would drive the use of these work-related strategies. And so if you really like your work and it's fun and enjoyable, you're going to look to ways to optimise it so you can continue doing it in a way where it's less aversive, more interesting, so pro-social helping, changing tasks, setting a new goal, all these kinds of things. In relation to overcommitment, we thought if people are really overcommitted, this might make this sort of negative effect of the job demands on their break taking stronger. And it also might inhibit this effect of intrinsic motivation on the hourly strategies. And we thought that because their sort of overcommitment, their excessive striving might compromise those beneficial effects of the intrinsic motivation of work, might undermine it. But we also expected that there might be some moderation at the back end of the model. So even if someone who's overcommitted does take a break, maybe they don't benefit from it because they might still be ruminating on the pressures of work during that micro break. which might disrupt energy gains, stress recovery, etc. Even if someone who's overcommitted uses work-related strategies, they may not benefit from it in terms of the mastery, because they're probably not ever going to be satisfied with what they're achieving in relation to their work goals. Okay, so this was a similar study to the Zafar et al. One. So we asked employees to complete hourly surveys through the workday. They did a baseline survey. There were a heart rate monitor. And we had 91 participants who provided us enough usable data and we could retain. Just quickly, for those who are not familiar with heart rate variability, this is collected by any kind of heart rate monitor that detects the beat of the heart, and it computes the variability in the beats of the heart over sort of time periods. So that can be like over 5 minutes or an hour or a day. And more variability in the heart rate is thought to index parasympathetic system activation, which is the down regulation of stress arousal. That's the relax and recover system. So a higher heart rate variability is thought to be a good thing and correlates usually with a lot of good things. But of course, it has to be sort of in context of what's going on. So it's been found in lab studies in more controlled environments, index mental workload. So when mental workload goes up, heart rate variability goes down. When people are having to do some task that requires the regulation of emotion or their self-regulation, heart rate variability goes down. Also in response to stresses and when fatigued in lab studies. In field studies, it's a bit harder sometimes because there's a lot of other stuff going on. And so the indicator that I'm using in this research is the one that's thought to be the best one for field research, but it's not innocuous to a whole range of factors. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. The big benefit is you can stick heart rate monitors on people and off they go. It's very easy for them to use the equipment and monitor themselves and get the data and do stuff with it later. Because it's all time-stamped. But the big challenge is that it's not only sort of state-like, but also very trait-like. So there's huge individual differences in people's heart rate variability. And also, there's lots of factors that can affect it. So it's not like a self-reported measure. We can't really say that is this, because it needs to be understood in the context of what's happening with that person and these other potential confounding factors. So we did try to recruit office workers so they would have not too much physical movement, but we can't rule that out as an issue, and we'll see. And when we get to the results, there might be some issue of that. There might be an effect or it might be a confound. We'll find out. Okay, so just so you know, the CFA of all the measures we're looking at was acceptable when we use more discrete measures of energy management. So Hannes and I developed a measure that looks at physical and micro breaks, social micro breaks, and private micro breaks. And then in the work-related strategies, we've got a measure that taps into pro-social strategies, also what's called meaningful strategies, that reflecting on your work being important or meaningful, and the organising strategies. There's probably about 6 or 7 different measures of energy management going around at the moment. No one's really settled in on one. Other scholars have just focused in on the micro breaks. And there's some issues with some existing measures. Some people conflate physical strategies with relaxation strategies. So it's a bit of a mess. So we were hoping to try to develop something new, but I'm not sure we've quite got there. So I was also hoping for your feedback on what you thought was more interesting, but also digestible in terms of publishing this work, and whether we need all these strategies, because 6 is a lot to keep track of. I also checked a CFA where we have a higher order factor of micro breaks and work-related strategies. And that works for the work-related strategies. They all load onto a higher order work-related strategy factor. So if someone's organising, reflecting on the meaning, and being pro-social, they're sort of tending to do all those things together. So they're doing a whole range of work-related strategies. So there's consistency there, but people are not so consistent in the types of micro breaks they take. And so none of the micro break strategies loaded on a micro break factor. And so people are quite divergent in the types of micro breaks they take. This is not unusual. Hannes and I argued this in our 2014 paper, and now I feel guilty about it because all the other energy management researchers are citing us as that's a justification not to do a CFA and not to have reliable measures and things like that. But at that time, we really did think that it might be what you call more a formative thing rather than a reflective construct for those of you interested who understand CFA. So that, you know, it's like socioeconomic status, the combination of things that add up to reflect something rather than it reflecting some underlying strategy of taking micro breaks. So there's some issues there, I think, conceptually to work through. And if anyone does have any advice on that, I'd much appreciate it. Also, at this stage, I haven't included the overcommitment measure in this CFA. It would just be at the between subjects. This is a multi-level CFA. It would just be at the between subjects level anyway. And as you can see, all the ICCs are acceptable for multi-level research. So it's somewhere between sort of 30 and 70% of the variance is between subjects, depending on the DV or the variable. Heart rate variability, that's very common for it to be so high, because I remember I said it's very trait-like construct, but it's still an acceptable split for multi-level. So what did we find? Well, first of all, in terms of that first aim, we've replicated the prior research. Use of the micro breaks is associated with less fatigue and more vitality hour by hour, controlling for the previous hour's energy levels. As we thought, the work-related strategies are associated with feeling more mastery over your work, so that was promising. And interestingly, in this study, our new measure of the work-related strategies, which has those 3 types I described, is also associated with feeling more vital, which hasn't been found with the bigger checklist, which had a lot of things that didn't really associate with energy in the prior research. We chose the ones that seem to have the most potential. And as we expected, there is this sort of cost with taking micro breaks, that it can mean that you don't feel like you're mastering your work that hour. No direct effects for heart rate variability. Now that's when I've got these rig categories of the strategies. Now, what if they're more specific? And I will just say we also replicated that general pattern that everyone finds, that in general, more work-related strategies, more vitality. So this is what my problem is with this paper. It's because I think it's potentially more interesting to look at the specific strategies, but there's so many of them. And so it incredibly increases the complexity of the work. So any advice here would be particularly appreciated. So when you break it down, it's really the physical micro breaks, taking a little walk outside, a stroll, stretching your legs. That's really all these beneficial effects, and also for heart rate variability. Now this could be a meaningful effect, or it could be that more physical movement is meaning more heart rate variability. I can't know that or control that with this sort of physiological measure. I can note it as a limitation in the discussion. Interestingly, taking a break to have a social chat with a colleague, like if I went and had a little chat to Kirsten in the office next door, that makes me feel more happy, alive and vital. It also makes me feel like, oh, I'm not really mastering my work this hour. And taking that private break to check in with my partner, SMS with him, or something like make plans for the weekend, sort of having a negative effect on my mastery as well. So it's the physical breaks, which keeps coming up in the literature, really, really good, generally good, no costs. But other types of breaks can sometimes have potential costs. And I have included these sort of marginal effects like 0, 5, 6, just because it's a work in progress. In relation to the work-related strategies, when you're looking at the more specific ones, like usual, pro-social is associated with hourly vitality. I should have said that in our prior research when we look at the more specific work-related strategies. Being pro-social, helping colleagues, always makes you feel more alive and vital hour by hour, study by study. But that's not necessarily specific to energy management literature. There's so much literature on pro-social behaviour being good for people's well-being, in particular when it's autonomously motivated. But also really interestingly, meaning, like reflecting on the meaning of your work. It's something that's focusing on what gives me joy, that sort of stuff. That is associated with less fatigue. And it's the only thing in this study that's significantly associated with less fatigue. Fatigue was increasing through the day in this sample, and not many things were overcoming it. And then all 3 of the work-related strategies are associated with mastering the work, which is what we were hoping and expecting. So what about when people manage their energy? So once again, we checked, does your energy level the prior hour predict the use of any of these strategies, overall broader categories, but also specific strategies? And no, once again, it doesn't. So how you're feeling, how it's feeling at 2 o'clock isn't going to affect the types of strategies I use between 2 and 3. Okay. I know there's been that prior work by Kim et al. Like if I'm generally tired that day, I might generally take more micro breaks, but it's not such a momentary phenomenon. What about the work-related factors that we were interested in? Well, as expected, the more demanding work is, I feel under pressure, it's hard, I'm really busy, the less likely we are to take breaks, but more specifically physical and private breaks. It doesn't have a bearing on having the social chat. And the more intrinsically motivating my work is, it's enjoyable, I like doing it, the more likely we are to use these work-related strategies, is what we thought. Now, in terms of the indirect effects here, there are significant indirect effects whereby demand is actually associated with more fatigue through the use of less of these breaks, and intrinsic motivation is associated with more mastery, but really through pro-social and meaning, not organising strategies. And interestingly, demands in this model, if I include the direct effects, don't have any direct effects to the outcomes when you consider energy management, but motivation still has direct effects. So intrinsic motivation, if work is intrinsically motivating, it's just really beneficial for your stress. It's even associated with heart rate variability positively, your subjective energy and your mastery. So the use of these work-related strategies is only partially explaining that benefit of having intrinsically motivating work. So I think this is actually really important because if people work is good, quality, intrinsically motivating and not overly pressuring and demanding, energy management is going to be much more easy for them than people who are in less good quality work. And then there was this little interesting, but it's marginal kind of negative effect, crossover, where the more demanding work is, the harder, not negative, but just unexpected crossover effect, where the more demanding work is, the more you're reflecting on the meaning of it. You know, there's all this literature on challenge and hindrance stress in the occupational health psych area, and sometimes something like having a high workload, a very pressuring job is sort of considered a challenge stressor. This might be just one of those sorts of challenge stress effects, but it's a big debate there about whether challenging stresses are actually beneficial or not. So I'm not going to interpret that too strongly, but I just wanted to be full disclosure about all the stuff we've got going on here. Then in terms of who is at risk or who needs energy management the most, we looked into overcommitment as a cross-level moderator. We also just checked people who are more overcommitted, using some strategies more than others or less than others. There's no direct effects of overcommitment on the use of these strategies at the workday level. When we look at the strategies in a discrete way, so all 6 specific strategies, there's some moderation of the effect of demands on breaks as we expected. So overcommitted people, when jobs are high in demand and less likely to take breaks, but mid-level commitment and low commitment, they're not affected by demands in terms of their break-taking behaviour. And when we use those higher order categories, it's more at the back end. So there we're finding this effect where when people take work-related strategies, it has an impact on their heart rate variability now. I've just got these graphed here for you. So this was that first one. And this is on physical micro breaks, but it's the same for private micro breaks. So that negative effect of demand on the use of these break strategies is only for people who are high in overcommitment. That second one is a little more complex at the back end, so it's not quite what we expected. It's not about, this lack of kind of benefit for overcommitted people. It's sort of more about how if they're not using work-related strategies, they have better stress physiology, hour by hour. So I think it's sort of tapping into a different kind of break from work, so not necessarily a micro break, but not trying to overly optimize work with work-related strategies. But this is the sort of issue I'm wondering about is, which is more interesting and which is potentially more important. looking at those broader categories and keeping it simple and looking at the more specific strategies. And so I'm really interested in what people think. This is just a little summary of what we found, but I think we might stop there so we have time for questions. And of course, just quickly, of course, there's some limitations with this research. It's one workday. Of course, it's 8 hours within a workday, and it's got physiology, but it's just one workday. The predictors and the mediators, so demand, intrinsic motivation, and the energy management are in the same hour. Energy, the outcomes are measured at the end of the hour, like right now. So it's a bit difficult to tease apart cause and effect with this data. I've thought about using earlier assessments and things like that, but I think it really is a momentary phenomena. Like if I'm intrinsically motivated by my work, you know, the things I'm doing between 1 and 2, is that really going to affect what I'm doing at 2 and 3? I'm not so sure about that, but I really like people's advice on that. Yeah, it's very interesting but tricky to get at the more dynamic fluctuations within a day because you can only survey people so many times. And also, some of you who are familiar with the effort reward imbalance area, there is some debate about whether overcommitment is actually a trait or if it's more of a state-like construct. And we didn't have very many moderating effects of this and no kind of main effects of it as we might expect. So I'm not so sure about it as a trait-like moderator. We do have some other variables in the baseline survey we could explore, but at that point, I'm really keen to hear people's feedback and thoughts and answer any questions. And also just wanted to thank Kenneth and Marissa.